Hey everybody. I took a few days off for Christmas, and I ended up catching a cold in my stocking. Now, I think that I'm on the mend, but please bear with me because it's still kind of lingering a bit. With that out of the way, I thought that this issue was too important not to report on. You see, while many content creators have reported on the Roy Moore false flag, there's a larger issue that many commentators failed to discuss that's even more important. You see, the Roy Moore fraud is just the tip of the iceberg. With that out of the way, let's dive in. However, before we get started, let's discuss false flags. Now, false flags, according to Wikipedia, are covert operations designed to deceive. The deception creates the appearance of a particular party, group, or nation being responsible for some activity, disguising the actual source of responsibility. I want you guys to keep that in mind for a bit, because really, this is the theme of this entire video. Now, with that out of the way, let's do a brief summary of the Roy Jones story for those that really don't know the full facts. According to Mother Jones, in the run-up to Alabama's special election, Kremlin-linked news sites and trolls have battled vigorously on behalf of Roy Moore, the Republican candidate for U.S. Senator. Since allegations against Moore were first reported by the Washington Post on November 9th, Russian-linked Twitter accounts, including some operated by Russian news outlets RT and Sputnik, have attacked the credibility of the woman accusing Moore, as well as the U.S. media reporting of the allegations. During a week in mid-November when sexual misconduct scandals were a top focus of these Kremlin-linked accounts, a majority of the content they pushed on the topic was in defense of Moore, according to the cybersecurity research project Hamilton 68. The pro-Moore push has continued apace. This past weekend, hashtag Alabama Senator Race was among the top trending hashtags tracked on the Hamilton 68 dashboard, which is operated by the Nonpartisan Alliance for Securing Democracy and monitors approximately 600 Twitter accounts linked to Russian influence operations. And the story goes on. Moore has joined Trump in openly expressing a personal affinity for Putin. In an interview with The Guardian this summer, Moore praised Putin's opposition to same-sex marriage, saying, "Maybe he's more akin to me than I know." Several weeks after his comments, more than 1,000 Russian-language Twitter accounts suddenly started following Moore's official account. In the first week of December, Kremlin-linked accounts tracked by Hamilton 68 went on the attack in the wake of ousted Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's guilty plea to charges that he lied to the FBI about his conversations with Russian ambassador after the 2016 election. All right, so with that out of the way, just checking the bottom of the article there. Again, I'm a little bit under the weather, so bear with me. Welcome to the single take video. The takeaways are this. Russian-linked accounts defended Moore against sexual assault. Over 1,000 Russian-language Twitter accounts started following Moore after the election. And clearly, Moore likes Putin, so therefore he must be evil. Now, remember this, because it's going to be important very soon. However, the Mother Jones story wasn't just fake news. It was actually outright fraud. We fast forward to December 21st of this year when business journals reported LinkedIn co-founder reportedly funded Russian-style influence campaign in Alabama race. Billionaire LinkedIn founder Reid Hoffman paid $100,000 into an experiment that adopted Russia-inspired political disinformation tactics on Facebook during last year's special Senate race in Alabama, the New York Times reports. During the 2017 special Senate race in Alabama, the project's organizers created a fake Facebook page designed to attract conservative Republican voters. Once they had built an audience, the page criticized Republican candidate Roy Moore and urged its followers to vote for a write-in candidate, according to an internal report on the campaign obtained by the Times. We orchestrated an elaborate false flag operation that planted the idea that the Moore campaign was amplified on social media by a Russian botnet, the report said. One of the project's participants, New Knowledge CEO Jonathan Morgan, called it a small experiment that wasn't designed to affect the outcome of the election. Democratic candidate Doug Jones beat out Moore by fewer than 22,000 votes in a race where campaigns spent $51 million and garnered 1.3 million votes. The research project was intended to help us understand how these kinds of campaigns operated, Morgan told the Times. We thought it was useful to work in the context of a real election, but design it to have almost no impact. Yeah, no impact, sure. So, who is Jonathan Morgan? Other than being the CEO of New Knowledge, according to business journals? Well, according to Securing Democracy, He helped design Hamilton 68. See, under their analytical techniques, it states, in order to identify the most relevant accounts for each, we employed social network analytical techniques largely developed by J.M. Berger and Jonathan Morgan. Okay, then it goes on to state, in addition to the metrics above, which are described in detail in the linked papers, we also employed a fast in-groupness IQI metric designed by Morgan. So really, the takeaways here are that Jonathan Morgan was the main designer of Hamilton 68, and Hamilton 68's metrics were actually also developed by Morgan. So we now know that not only did the fake Russian bot hoaxer Jonathan Morgan illegally interfere with Roy Moore's election campaign, he was also the main developer of the Hamilton 68 program used to detect Russian bots in the first place. Now, according to Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting on April 5th, 2018, they state, Watts, the media's most cited expert on so-called Russian bots and co-founder of Hamilton 68, said the narrative is overdone. The three primary problems are the bots on the Hamilton 68 dashboard are not necessarily connected to Russia. They are not all in Russia. We don't even think that they are all commanded in Russia at all. We think that some of them are legitimately passionate people who are just really into promoting Russia. Hamilton 68 doesn't specify which accounts are viewed as Russian bots. That's a trade secret. Because, transparency and presenting your evidence in the light of day, that's a bridge too far. And then the second concern is that Twitter is clogged with bots, so telling which are Russian and which aren't is impossible. And tons of bots are run out of the United States. And again, it's almost impossible to distinguish simply between partisan GOP bots and Russian ones. All right, so the takeaways here are pretty clear, okay? The bots they supposedly detect aren't all in Russia. They have no real clue of where they're at. And because Twitter has so many bots anyway, determining which ones are Russian and which ones aren't is impossible. And a lot of US marketing companies and political organizations use bots. It's impossible to distinguish those from Russian bots as well. So the takeaway is this. Hamilton 68 doesn't work. And all the stories based on Hamilton 68 about Russian bots, which is most, if not all of them, are fake news. Now, the Securing Democracy Communications Director for Hamilton 68, Brett Schaefer, he even doubled down. According to the Daily Caller, we don't track bots. What the media's Russian bot coverage is getting all wrong. Establishment media claims Russian bots pushing conservative causes are littered with factual errors. Two groups at the heart of the Russian bot stories debunked media claims about their work. Multiple media outlets falsely claim hordes of Russian bots were rallying around Fox News host Laura Ingraham. Outlets including the New York Times, the Washington Post, and CNN have used the Alliance for Securing Democracy's Hamilton 68 dashboard to blame Russian bots for boosting conservative issues and conspiracy theories on social media. Most of the reporting on the dashboard is inherently inaccurate, the Alliance's communication director, Brett Schaefer, told the Daily Caller News Foundation over the weekend. Most notably, and this is the most common error, we don't track bots, or more specifically, bots are only a small portion of the network that we monitor. We've tried to make this point clear in all our published reporting, yet most of the third-party reporting on the dashboard continues to appear with some variation of the headline, Russian bots are pushing X. This is inherently inaccurate. The takeaways here, Hamilton 68 doesn't track bots. And all the news about Russian bots is fake news. Honestly, did anyone expect anything different? Hamilton 68 was designed by confirmed Russian bot hoaxer Jonathan Morgan. And those close to the project admit it doesn't work. Now, let's switch gears to Facebook for a second, because Facebook claims it's fighting Russian electoral interference, but both Vice and Business Insider debunk those claims. Vice's story that debunks it is Facebook's political ad tool lets us buy ads paid for by Mike Pence and ISIS. And Business Insider states, we ran 2 fake ads pretending to be Cambridge Analytica, and Facebook failed to catch that they were frauds. So, both organizations debunked Facebook's claims it detected Russian electoral interference by purchasing political ads under fake names. Hell, Vice even showed that Facebook doesn't care if terrorists buy political ads, as long as the checks cash. However, there is some hope. You see, the Alabama Attorney General has opened an investigation into the false flag operation. Now, Hopefully, the AG investigation will not only hold the guilty accountable for their false flag, but trigger a special election based on the fact that our electoral process was corrupted by Democrat fraudsters. While the news of the Roy Jones false flag operation is bad, to me, that's not the story. There are larger issues at play here. The fraudster who helped run the Roy Moore false flag operation, Jonathan Morgan, is also the main developer of Hamilton 68, the program designed to detect Russian electoral interference, and has been the source of many mainstream media stories on the Russian narrative, which, by the way, are all fake news. The Roy Moore fraud by itself is enough to destroy the credibility of the Hamilton 68 project. However, to add insult into injury, the Hamilton 68 team members have publicly admitted multiple times to the media their program doesn't work. How many other times have the Russians been falsely accused of electoral interference based on the discredited Hamilton 68 project? And just as importantly, I have a rule of three. That is, where there's one, there's at least three. For example, if you catch someone lying to you once, they've lied to you at least 2 other times. You just haven't caught them yet. Now that we have a confirmed case of Democrats falsely blaming Russians for their own false flag operations, there's a good possibility that there's at least 2 other instances of Democrat fraud out there. We just haven't caught them yet. I'm DDJ, and this is your dose of misandry today.